Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ, presented by Enterprise. Our senior college football writer Dennis Dodd dropping his latest college football power rankings for you on a Monday. Georgia, 28 straight wins. They're still sitting there at number 1. Michigan is at number 2 over Ohio State at number 3. Washington now in the top 4 after making a big statement over Oregon State. And then we have Florida State at number 5. Of course, the big news there, Jordan Travis. He is out for the season after suffering a brutal leg injury. And we have Dennis Dodd to talk about his rankings. Then we also have Danny Kanell because we saw Florida State there at 5. So we got to have DK chime in on that as well and go through the rankings. Dennis, let's talk about Michigan coming in at number 2 over there over Ohio State. Do you think the CFP is going to bump Michigan over Ohio State in their latest rankings that are going to come out tomorrow, especially when you consider all of the outside noise that has been going on with Michigan and that program?
Here's the thing about the Big Ten. It's down. And it looks like the old days when Bo and Woody were walking the sideline where it was Michigan and Ohio State and everybody else. You know, I don't know how in what way that's going to change with the new teams coming in next year. But right now it's Michigan and Ohio State and everybody else. I thought what Michigan did Saturday, and I guess I'm answering your question, yes. I don't know if the committee will rank them Ohio State ahead. But I've got Michigan ahead because I thought that was a good road win. A little bit of adversity. I know Maryland had just had 51 scored on it previously in the Big Ten. But Michigan had a scoop and score. Blake Corum had his 51st career, rushing touchdown. They had a safety. That was pretty much a Jim Harbaugh victory in the Big Ten. And I know it was the most points that scored on Michigan this year, 24, but it was only 24. They made some mistakes. J.J. McCarthy threw an interception. We know that. There's a lot of penalties, actually. But I think Michigan's win was more impressive to me than Ohio State beating, a punching bag at Minnesota that wasn't going to push back to begin with.
Wow, I am surprised. Dennis, I don't think there's any chance the committee will, drop Ohio State below Michigan because they don't have to. We're going to see this game play out this weekend. I don't think they're going to ruffle any feathers, tomorrow night when we do get the rankings. I think what Ohio State is doing right now in the last 2 weeks with their blowout wins over Michigan State and Minnesota is what Michigan did the first 6 weeks of the season. They're beating up on their lesser competition. So Ohio State, I think, finally is getting some of those eye point tests, winning 38-3 and 37-3. Everybody's starting to get right. Kyle McCord, they're kind of figuring out, okay, he's a guy we can work with, but they're playing to his strengths. And their defense, by the way, is putting up massive numbers. I thought Michigan looked sloppy. I thought it looked ugly. I thought J.J. McCarthy looked like a young quarterback, the way that Kyle McCord has been looking. So I don't think there's any chance Ohio State will drop below Michigan. In fact, if anything, I look at the last couple weeks and I think Ohio State might be ready to actually pull this thing off in Ann Arbor this weekend as a 3.5, 4-point underdog. We'll have to see before we make our official picks, but I'm more bullish on Ohio State than Michigan going into it.
And those two undefeated teams.
I agree with that. I agree with that to the point that the 3.5 points this Saturday, I think it's too low. I think Michigan will win more than that. But I thought your last thought was right. I think Ohio State's coming together, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they won this game. I'm just surprised it's only 3.5, given what Michigan has done this year. I counted it up, guys. Total point differential for these two teams, 590 points. How about that? That should make a difference somewhere. When these teams lose, one of these teams is going to lose.
Yeah, one of them has to lose, and it's going to be interesting to see how the CFP handles that. So, Dennis, we saw your top 4 and the current top 4 for the CFP. Michigan, Ohio State being flip-flop was the only difference in the top 4. Both of you have Washington. But still, Dennis, it does feel like there has been a sense that maybe the Huskies have been overlooked nationally, coming through this season. But how big of a statement did they make with that win over Oregon State? And it was in the rain, in the cold. Just how much of a statement was that for the Huskies, in your opinion?
It was huge. Oregon State's really tough to play since they've been good under Jonathan Smith. It was raining. It was cold. It was windy. They couldn't rely on Michael Penix's arm totally. It had to be a defensive effort. They got after DJ Uiagalelei defensively and just eked this one out. I mean, not everybody, but a lot of people talk about this margin of victory. 45 total points in the last 7 games of Washington. At some point, that has to become a strength. And that's, given the circumstances, that's probably the way that game was going to go Saturday. So them winning by only 2 points, I think, is a point of strength. In 2002, Ohio State went 14-0. 7 of their games were by a touchdown or less. Maybe Washington is starting to look like that team.
I totally agree with you. I think Washington is going to jump into that number 4 spot by the committee. That's the one thing they've kind of been just making their way along, but they've had concerns, right? Since the Oregon game, which they won, it almost feels like they lost, the way the national narrative has kind of been, myself included, being like, well, Oregon looked like the better team. They might have lost, and Oregon will beat them in the Pac-12 championship game, because Oregon's been impressive since then, and Washington has been kind of playing with their prey a little bit. But finally, we got a Washington team that looked the part on both sides of the football. And when the offense couldn't light it up through the air, they were able to get enough on the ground game. They were able to get enough defensive stops and get 2 interceptions, crucial one late, to seal the victory, where that showed me maybe this team we're sleeping on a little bit. This is a team that has made it to the playoffs before, something Oregon has not done. And I think we've written off Washington a little bit too early in the season, especially considering the fact they did beat the team everybody loves in the Oregon Ducks.
Number 5 on your list, Dennis, you have FSU, of course. That devastating news for Jordan Travis. He's going to be out for the rest of the season after suffering a brutal leg injury there. They have UF and Louisville in the ACC championship game. How much tougher are those tasks going to be without Jordan Travis, and how is the CFP committee going to assess those wins or losses with Jordan Travis out, Dennis?
Yeah, I'm going to make a bet here if anybody wants to take this bet. I'm going to bet that no one on the committee right now, selection committee, knows who Tate Rodemaker is. Now, who is Tate Rodemaker? He's the backup who played in place of Jordan Travis on Saturday night. He's capable. He's thrown 70 career passes. He was Mike Norvell's first signing or first commit when he came to Florida State. So I think he's capable. And I think the committee will find out who he is. But this is going to be really interesting. This is after Ohio State, Michigan. This is the most interesting game of the weekend, because you possibly have 2 backup quarterbacks playing. Max Brown for Florida, after Graham Mertz went out against Missouri. I'm told Graham Mertz may be lost for the season as well with an upper body injury. And so you've got a backup quarterback at Florida State playing at Florida, who's playing capably. They should have beaten Missouri. And they could knock Florida State out of the playoffs. This is going to be fascinating to me.
Yeah, I'm terrified of this game, Dennis, not because of what it could mean for Florida State, but that Jacqueline could have bragging rights over me like for the entire year. And I don't want to have to deal with that every time I go to studio. But this is a phenomenal matchup that's going to take place. And here's what I agree with you. I think Florida State does drop to 5, and that would have happened no matter what happened with Jordan Travis. North Alabama was not a resume builder, while Washington's getting a win over a top 15 team. So I think Florida State was going to drop no matter what. But I do think Florida State still controls their own destiny. I don't like the people out there that are saying, well, you just write them off. Doesn't matter if they win the ACC, the committee's not going to view them as the same as they did with Jordan Travis. You cannot do that. It is a team sport where there is still a lot of good supporting cast members around Tate Rodemaker. You still have 2 incredible receivers in Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson, a great back in Trey Benson in the backfield, and a defense which is getting better. So if, and this is a big if because of those questions, we don't know where we're going to get with Rodemaker. If they do win out, I think they're in. The one advantage that he does have, he did come in the game last year against Louisville around halftime, and Florida State was losing, and he led them back to a win. He came off the bench again, tight game, lesser competition, but got him the win. So he has played some, but we do not know what he's going to look like at the Swamp, because that place is going to be rocking. Because as bad as a season as it's been for Billy Napier, this is one of those kind of job-saving wins if he could get it to finish off the season.
You know what? Danny has managed to somehow diss the Gators when talking about the Jags. He finds a way to do it no matter what. So if Florida wins, I will 100% be bragging about it to Danny for at least a year. Okay, guys. Number 25 on Dennis's list, New Mexico State. A huge upset win over Auburn. And Dennis, I know you want to give a shout out to this team.
Yeah, number 25, New Mexico State has won 9 games now for the first time since 1960. They were 0-24 against the SEC. They played them on the road, not only beat Auburn, but embarrassed Auburn going into the Iron Bowl. And big shout out to Jerry Kill. Jerry Kill is a guy that has suffered medical problems throughout his career, coached at every level. I covered a game one year at Michigan where he was at Minnesota, and he didn't show up. He'd had a problem that night before and didn't show up. He had some medical problems. So this guy, I just love Jerry Kill. Good job by the Aggies, and they deserve to be in the top 25.
Yeah, sneaking into the top 25 there, beating an SEC opponent for the first time in 25 tries. Dennis Dodd, DK going through Dennis's latest college football power rankings. Thank you so much, guys. We appreciate it. And, of course, for all things happening in the world of college football, make sure you check out the Cover 3 podcast. There's a Week 12 instant reaction pod in your feed right now. You can download and listen wherever you get your pods, or you can scan that QR code.